Hello, I'm Chris and welcome to the Fragrant Divide. In this video, I wanted to share my impressions on the Hiram Green Discovery Set, which contains all 8 of their current existing perfumes. The main value proposition of Hiram Green, which is also the name of the founder and the perfumer himself, is that their perfumes are 100% all natural using sustainable ingredients. They also seem to have actual commitment to being a little more environment friendly with their packaging. The colorful juice of their products are natural as well, produced by the ingredients themselves. I have very limited experience with all natural perfumes, most of which are negative. More often, they seem to be overly simple, boring, and flat. My guess is that it has to do with the limited range of materials they have to work with in a sustainable manner. Or they have problems with reasonable projection and longevity, so they try to be overly clever with bases, and the compositions become too base heavy. What happens if the base is boring or unlikable? Or they are very expensive. Remember House of Matriarch? It's been a while since I've heard anyone talk about them. And I don't know why this is, but they also seem to often be created by indie, self-taught perfumers that end up with very homemade feeling and smelling products. Like, did you really just grab some leftover pickled ginger from that sushi restaurant and bottle it as a perfume and called it ginjambra? What the hell? Sometimes all natural comes across as just pure marketing gimmick with no actual commitment to why it's a good idea in the first place. Another negative is the increased risk of drastic reformulations or batch variations, because now you're dealing with more ingredients that may change from harvest to harvest. One of the clear advantages, clear to me at least, is that all natural perfumes are most likely much more biodegradable than regular perfumes, just like that leftover pickled ginger is also biodegradable. Another popular reason to go with all-natural perfumes has to do with oversensitivity to regular perfumes, but I myself is proof that that varies from person to person. I'll get more into that later. I do want to clear a few things though. All natural does not automatically guarantee that you will not get any kind of reaction. Vegan does not equate to all natural. Clean fragrances does not automatically make it all natural. So just be more critical when you start seeing these terms thrown around. So on to the perfumes. All of them are eau de parfum concentration and are priced at $210 US for 50 ml. The Discovery set itself was priced at $56. First up is Arbolé, which is a variation of the Spanish word for tree. This is probably the most commercial out of the entire collection, due to the familiar notes of patchouli, vanilla, tonka, with a slight gourmand undertone. What sidesteps those generic notes seem to be the presence of dry, smooth sandalwood. The entire composition is green, powdery, slightly woody, slightly sweet and dry. I've sampled this on and off several years ago, and it always makes me think that it contains iris, but it does not. I think it's the sandalwood that's giving that impression. I don't find this sweet at all, but you can probably increase the number of sprays to sweeten it up if you wish to do so. Next is a standout from the range. Hyde is an animalic leather with the main notes of birch tar and labdanum. This one really seems to go into stages. The early stages goes through a barbecue sauce with a tinge of sourness phase, then goes into a burnt rubber smell with a hint of vanilla phase. To be honest, if I was someone who does not smell these types of odors on a regular basis, part of me would think that there's a barnyardy horse smell in passing. Thankfully, those do not last long, and you get this beautiful, slightly sweet, smoky labdanum that sinks off of the test strip. That labdanum eventually tones down, and the nose-tingling birch tar becomes more apparent but remains smoky. The last stage that I've observed is that it goes back to being dominantly smoky, but in a really good way. As far as the smokiness goes, think Chanel's Expensive Le Lion, Le Labo's Labdanum 18, and Kerosine's Blackmail, which I think for the price is really good. One of the most popular from the collection is Moon Bloom. It is also Hiram Green's debut fragrance. It focuses on the note of tuberose, both its floral and bubblegummy aspects. It has some greenness in the early stages, and while it is oddly plasticky, It didn't particularly bother me. What bothers me is how pronounced the bubblegum is. And to make matters worse, the perfumer decided to support that by adding a creamy coconut plus sweet jasmine. That eventually overtakes the entire dry down. If you want a tuberose that is present until very late in the dry down, this might not be the perfume for you. Slowdive is unmistakably a beeswax and honey perfume. Not particularly an animalic or earthy honey, it's a little brighter with a slight hint of booze. The early stage smells and feels like soft beeswax that, oddly enough, is accompanied by a weird bitter smell. Not sure what that is, but it reminds me of a bitter smell that specifically noisy insects make, usually in grassy, shrubby areas. In the later stages, the beeswax and honey are still prominent, but there's this humid thing going on. And again, I am unsure if it's indole or tobacco, but it was quite interesting. The notes say that this has tobacco blossom. I looked it up and tobacco blossom does not smell like your typical tobacco from the leaves. Slowdive is a very interesting fragrance, but ultimately it's a honey scent. It also has pretty good longevity on skin, but I stopped paying attention after around 2.5 hours. Pretty sure it was still there beyond that. Another plus is that it doesn't become extra sweet when exposed to body heat. That's a typical behavior of sweet perfumes on my skin. Shangri aims to be a traditional sheep. I'm not super experienced with this genre, but this one is undeniably oak moss dominant. It opens with almost sparkling bright citruses with a pronounced green mossy oak moss. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what happens for most of the middle stages, because after a few minutes, this shut my nose down and gave me a really bad reaction on every sniff after that. After over 2 hours, the paper strip I used still smelled of beautiful oak moss though. This next one confused me the most. Arcadia is a fougere, and like many fougères, it relies on the aromatic nature of lavender. That did not register to me at all. Like your typical fougere, this opens with beautiful citruses and a noticeable oak moss despite not being listed in the notes. I had to double check the ingredients to verify that there is indeed oak moss in this. It's usually listed as Evernia pronastri, so remember to double check the ingredients just in case. What probably threw me off is that the early stage is accompanied by what I thought was fatty, soapy, astringent aldehydes. And yes, aldehydes can be naturally occurring, but in perfumery, synthetics are usually preferred. And Hiram Green is an all-natural brand, so that's not it. The rest of the perfume's development revolves around hints of warm spices and tonka bean, and a balmy, soapy feeling typical of fougères. If there was a quote-unquote true unisex fougere, Arcadia would be a good example. I say that because most perfumes in this genre are overtly masculine. Perfumes have always had roots in the art of seduction, and Hiram Green's take on a love potion is Philtre. This fragrance features the primary note of carnation. I do apologize, carnation is another note that I'm not familiar with, but I'm going to try my best. To my nose, this is a pretty linear scent that revolves around a spicy carnation and rose combo. There's a metallic thing happening, just like in a lot of rose perfumes. It also makes me think of a chili pepper note that usually comes off as metallic as well. It has notes of clove and black pepper, but they seem to be just to support and extend the spiciness of the carnation without overpowering the floral aspect. It's definitely floral for a long time, but I found that the test strip I used smelled of woody vanilla the next day. This is not really my cup of tea though. And finally, Tryst. This is all about orange tree essences like orange blossom, neroli, and orange zest. It opens quite green with hints of soapiness, while being quite bright with an orange scent seemingly just at the cusp of ripening. There's almost a noticeable point when the orange blossom becomes prominent. All of this is anchored by a very light touch of honey that melds really well with a slightly indolic orange blossom. The brand pretty much described this perfectly. Bright, crisp, and golden. But wait, I have one more. The whole reason why I got this discovery set is to sample Tryst. Tryst is basically a reformulation of one of my favorite scents, the discontinued Dilettante. So, how do they compare? The color of the juices actually is quite telling. Though they both have green and citrusy facets in the opening, Tryst is much brighter, while Dilettante doubles down on the indolic and animalic sides of orange flower and honey. It's so pleasantly dirty that I even thought there was civet in there, maybe pollen or cumin, possibly even an earthy oak moss. Think along the lines of 24 Faubourg from Hermès or Fleur d'Oranger from Serge Lutens. But despite the dirtiness, Dilettante is brighter than those two. So those are my impressions on the entire line of Hiram Green. Before I rank them, I just had to say that I reacted pretty badly to some of these. So in my case, an all-natural perfume doesn't particularly give me comfort as far as bad reactions go. Actually, I feel even worse now knowing that not only do I suffer from synthetic overloads, but also natural ingredients. And that sucks. Ranking them starting with my least favorite, Moon Bloom will be the worst one for me. Not a fan of the bubblegum, coconut, sweet jasmine dry down. Next, Philtre. The spicy carnation is just not for me. Then Hyde. Despite the beautiful smoky dry down, the animalic opening is something that will make me too self-conscious. Shangri, nice chypre, but the fact that it shuts down my nose is not a good sign for me. Tryst, technically beautiful, but made my entire face and scalp sweat during testing. Slowdive, despite the slight twists, it's ultimately just a honey fragrance, but a really good all-natural one. Arbolé, super familiar profile, almost on the simple side, but executed very, very well. And my favorite has to be Arcadia. I enjoy smelling a really good fougere, but they're always trying too hard to smell masculine. And when I come across a good fougere, I often think to myself, this would smell really good on a manlier dude. But not so much on me. Arcadia seems to be the fougere style that would suit me very well. And I know it's discontinued, but I couldn't help myself. I just have to say that Dilettante beats them all. Overall, Hiram Green, as far as I can tell, is a really good all-natural brand and can compete with regular perfumes around its price point, especially if you're not getting any harsh reactions. It's understandable that they won't be able to compete with the projections of something that's loaded with so much Ambroxan, ISO-E Super, Akigala wood, you name it. As far as criticisms go, I didn't like how the brand just puts generic terms like spices or resins in the notes. Because for an all-natural brand, the ingredients are a big deal. Another is I do wish that they were more explicit about IFRA compliance. For an all-natural brand, I would think that that would be mentioned somewhere in their website. But I wasn't able to find it anywhere, so as it stands, I actually don't know if they're compliant or not. But don't get it twisted, as they say. They are EU regulations compliant, which is a much more important piece of information. They are in Hyde, Netherlands after all. This is a mandatory compliance. Also, I would really be interested in what the projected shelf life of these perfumes are. I feel like these are questions that should be in the FAQ section of a website. Well, that's all I have. I hope this was helpful in some way, and thank you for watching.